Hello everyone, what I have for you today is an Abathur speedrun that hasn't been updated ever since the original symbiote nerf a long time back. Before the symbiote nerf, the speedrun record was 851, and then the post-nerf record was 919. And it was generally thought that this was near the limit for Abathur due to his nerf, and we really didn't think it would get under 9 minutes again. But as it turns out, the nerfs didn't hit as hard as they should have, and significant advances in build order, luring techniques, and ultimate management led to this gigantic improvement. The mastery choices are fairly straightforward for a speedrun of this type. 22 points in Toxic Nest Mastery, so that I can one-shot Adepts and two-shot Immortals and Colossi. I have 30 points in Symbiote Mastery, an obvious choice since this run is entirely reliant on Ultimate Evolutions. And for the last Mastery set, I have 1 point in Nest Charge, so that I have the 6th Nest charging immediately as the game starts, while the rest of the points go into Structure Morph so that I can tech as quickly as possible. Note that this is a speedrun specific spread, and I highly advise the average player to not go so few points in nest charges. The speedruns plans out the use for every single nest and is extremely efficient in nest usage, which is why I can get away with just a single point. This map should have the fastest 6 ultimate rush possible, and this is one of the maps where biomass generation far exceeds my economy's ability to rush mutas out. The game starts off as you'd expect any speedrunning Abathur to do, which is to send a drone out while banking for a roach warren. I have my overlord sent towards the final area to be ready to morph into an overseer later. You'll find that when the roach warren pops, I build a roach first, and then the spore. Whereas guides you can find online will recommend building a spore and then the first roach. This is because even with a delayed spore and faster roach, I will finish my initial luring sequence before the roach arrives, so I just want the roach out as quickly as possible. This is a case in a lot of speedruns, especially on maps with long walking distances such as Void Ranch. The average player who isn't as comfortable with luring should go spore first to consistently finish luring before the roach arrives. So after the first lure, the spore is used to hit the Thrasher, abusing the weird Thrasher AI that makes it consistently miss the spore. So it tries to target it and really fails at it. And the first real divergence comes from the fact that I skipped luring from this small encampment to the side. Going into Amon's view here. And instead, I send a roach directly to the final area to lure. The reason is that for speedruns, you want to skip as much as the map as possible. And this encampment certainly isn't necessary, especially considering I'll generate way more biomass than I'll ever need from the final area. In addition, luring from this encampment would give me enough biomass for the first Brutalisk, but the big lure from the final area is actually best done with a high health roach instead. Remember that ultimate evolutions have symbiotes that you cannot control, and this means the first Brutalisk will likely kill something while luring from the final area. If a locust spawns from that kill, it has a high chance of ruining the entire lure. The Brutalisk will also take a lot of unnecessary hits during that lure, and every bit of HP counts in this run. Now with this big lure, you can see me drop a sacrificial nest in the middle of the enemy as my roach approaches. When the nest is killed, the enemies within range of that nest will go into search mode and will aggro onto the roach at a range greater than what it normally is. This allows my roach to aggro enemies deeper inside without actually going deeper inside and taking massive damage in the process. This allows for a devastating nest detonation for a huge amount of biomass. With the first Brutalisk, I begin working on clearing as many enemies as I can from this final area. The big problem are the 2 Hybrid Dominators at the back. So these 2. Because of their highly damaging plasma shots, I need all 6 ultimates to properly fight them without taking too much damage. The goal is then to have the Brutalisk clear everything short of aggroing the Dominators. The sides have some units that could be lured, so I work on those first, and I still want to have them be damaged by nests whenever possible, since that generates more biomass, and those units are actually quite tanky and damaging to my brutalists. I also want to lure these heavy units in the middle, including the 2 Tempests. For that, I lay some nests once the central area is secure. Then I simply go forward to draw aggro and kite back. I do have to stop every once in a while to maintain aggro on the Colossi, who have higher range than the others. And hold position is key for utilizing the Brutals well, otherwise they run all over the place and just die. So once the heavy ground units are destroyed by nests, I quickly go back to maintain aggro on the air units and let the Brutalists destroy those. Once I destroy everything that have been aggroed, and maybe a few more units tucked near the back, then the Thrashers should trigger.
Raiders, assume defensive positions.
This is also around the time when I have to start paying attention to the first attack wave. The optimal enemy wave for this run is a zealot-oriented composition hitting at 4 minutes, but I got the 3-minute variation instead. The 3-minute wave is size 1, while the 4-minute wave is size 2, and the zealot waves are bigger than adept waves. I use the spore crawler from the beginning, and a single nest to kill the first attack wave, and as with any speedrun, I want lots of biomass. The 3-minute wave has a high probability that I won't have enough biomass overall to get my third Leviathan immediately, depending on how well I did at the final area, but with a 4-minute zealot wave, it's basically guaranteed.
Raiders, assume defensive
And in the
positions.
meantime, I let my Brutalists work on the Thrashers here, so that I can pay attention to the attack wave. Now, going back to the base, I've been following a tight build order for the fastest possible 6 ultimate rush. I wouldn't recommend it for most general cases since it absolutely tanks your economy, and you will struggle to recover if you lose ultimates prematurely. You will only make 3 extra drones, 2 after building the first roach and spore crawler, after which you build an overlord, then 2 roaches, then 2 extractors. Then you build a 3rd drone, and this leaves you with 6 gas drones and 5 mineral drones, which gives you a higher gas production than mineral production. However, since you've banked some minerals by the time you start mining gas, you hit an equal production point within the relevant time frame of the speedrun. You can see how this absolutely guts your economy, but this is the best power progression for Abathur for getting all 6 ultimates. Another thing you'll notice is that I delayed my Spire quite a bit, as well as my first Muta. So I waited until I banked 300-300 before I actually built the Spire. I actually built my first 2 Mutas at the same time instead of building them one at a time as resources become available. The reasoning is that my first Leviathan actually can't help much anywhere by itself. I need all 3 Leviathans to push the hybrid dominators at the final area here. And while one can chip away at a Thrasher, it will take tons of damage while my Brutalists are assaulting the 2 Thrasher area here to pass the time. I found that getting 2 Leviathans at the same time was a good compromise since they can chip away at one of the Thrashers fast enough, and this also allows one of my drones to mine more before being turned into a Spire. And you can see I used a gas drone to build the Spire to even out my resource production. Now I have 5 on minerals and 5 on gas. Okay, so as I mentioned, my Brutalists are constantly busy, and while I'm waiting for my Leviathans, they get to work on this Thrasher and the 2 Thrasher area. Right here. So this area is arguably more dangerous than the front half of the final area. And that's because of the limited space. You have cannons everywhere, and if you can't really make use of this lane over here because you risk drawing aggro from the two encampments on either side. So what that means is my Brutalisk will take a lot of damage while kiting the enemy forces. What I have them do is perform an aggressive charge with the highest health Brutalisk in the lead, and I lay offensive nests underneath. I wait for them to let them arm a bit, and I back off while spending a charge of mend to make sure they don't get killed before they finish arming. That should safely get rid of a lot of the enemy forces. My major goal here is to secure most of the area and kill one of the Thrashers, by which point I should have the third Leviathan and I can bring the army together. And just balancing out which units to focus on at any particular moment is very difficult because you are taking fire from so many directions at once. And the Brutalists do like to aggro on the Thrasher way too often. And while my Brutalists are working on the second Thrasher area, I am collecting biomass with my Mulelist and chipping away at this Thrasher here. And basically waiting for the third Leviathan to come. So now, we get to the most difficult part of the run. I've been putting off fighting the Hybrid Dominators here, but now that my 6 ultimates are assembled, it's time to face them. Their Plasma Blast deals 260 damage with very small AoE. The AoE doesn't matter for the most part unless I have some unfortunate stacking, but the ultimates are large enough so that they avoid it most of the time. 260 damage doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to remember at this point my Brutalists are getting pretty low. 2 of them are getting into the orange. 1 of them is actually higher than I would normally expect from a Brutalist at this stage. And 260 damage is over 25% of a Leviathan's health. I need to take at least 4 Plasma Blasts, 1 from each of the 2 hybrids here, and 2 from the one at the 3 Thrasher area, and that's the best case scenario. If I make mistakes, I might have to tank more. Hybrid Dominators also fall under the smart targeting AI programmed into Amon, in that they will prioritize killing low health units wherever possible. This means I need to be very careful in how I aggro the hybrids to spread out the damage, otherwise one will end up getting focused and killed. Since my Leviathans are relatively fresh, they're the logical choice for tanking some of the damage. The exact maneuver I want to do is stick to the side and kill some of the enemies there to keep the pressure off, hoping to draw the attention of the Dominator on the left side, like that. And I move a Leviathan forward, hoping that it's the target, preferably with the symbiote shield intact. Once the Dominator has taken aim, it's locked in, so I can rush in with the ultimates to burst it down. Then I want another Leviathan to move forward, or some other unit I'd like to rotate damage, or any healthy ultimate, to move forward and draw fire from the second Dominator as such. And then I can just burst both of them down as quickly as possible before they get a second shot off. Obviously, things are way too chaotic here between all the enemy units and the Thrashers to have a consistent setup, and this is why so many runs fail at this point. But once the hybrids are down, the rest of the enemies are simple to take out, and the Leviathans can be sent to the 3 Thrasher area, while the Brutalisk can work on the undefended Thrashers as well as take care of the second attack wave. It's an unfortunate consequence of the 3-minute wave. If I roll the 4-minute wave, then the second wave comes at 8 minutes, and I can just ignore that completely. Anyways, normally, splitting up isn't a very good idea. since a bigger army will kill the enemy faster and therefore will take less damage from the battles. Unfortunately, the 3 Thrasher area has some pretty insane anti-ground. So, Immortals, lots of Zealots, very high unit density, DTs, and the hybrids, of course. And so therefore, if I send a Brutalisk here along with my Leviathans, the Brutalists are already at pretty low health. They'll get absolutely wiped here if they join. So I'm forced to split forces at this point. And the consequence is that the Leviathans are slower in killing the Hydra Dominator, allowing it to get at least 2 Plasma Blasts off. I have to carefully rotate my Leviathans to avoid losing them to the Plasma Blast, as well as the other anti-air enemies in the area. And once the 3 Thrashers are triggered, it's a fairly straightforward rush to kill them all. One thing you have to watch out for is that Leviathans have an air-to-air attack, as well as an air-to-ground attack, and they can use both on the Thrashers, since the Thrashers are tall like Colossi. Unfortunately, the air-to-air attack has a very long range that also outrages symbiotes, 9 versus the symbiote 6. So if you simply right-click on the Thrasher and they're sufficiently far away, they'll stay in that air-to-air attack range and not use their other 2 attacks, which is why I manually click the Leviathans to go close to each Thrasher before having them attack. I also need to make sure any low health ultimate is not being focus fired too much. At the same time, I'm trying to manage my Brutalisk whenever necessary. But if they kept enough health from all the battling they did, then I can afford to let them tank the Thrashers a little bit so that I can focus more on the Leviathans. You can already see they're getting really low from the tanking that they did. In this case, I probably should have microed the Brutalisk a bit more, since one died while battling the final Thrasher. But it actually didn't end up affecting the final time due to this dialogue that needed to finish before the game could actually end. So there you go. A highly optimized Abathur speedrun on a very classic speedrunning map. I'm quite proud of the advances that were made in terms of aggressive nest snoring that made it possible to clear out each section so quickly, and this is one of the most optimized runs to date. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this analysis.